Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another ChatGPT musing discussion slash the musings of my own mind posed to uh, ChatGPT. This time, I had been watching a lot of videos on like the speed of light and E equals mc squared and um, the latest in science and how it compares to the latest in theology and my own religion's theology. And I posed a few questions, and I found the answers to be quite interesting. So I'll share them here and see what you think. Okay, here we go. Buckle up. Welcome to today's talk. Okay, based on my understanding of light, I posit that if we could instantly transport ourselves through a wormhole or something to a place light years away, we could look back at the Earth and view events as they actually happened in the past. The time travel doesn't make any sense to me, but viewing the distant past like we watch a video is something that I think is plausible. What say ye, ChatGPT? Okay. Your concept touches on an interesting aspect of how light and time are interconnected. In the realm of relativity, the speed of light, what you're describing is essentially a form of time travel in terms of observing events that have already happened. If you were to instantly transport yourself to a place light years away, and then look back at the Earth, you'd indeed be seeing light from the past. Light takes time to travel across vast distances. So the farther away you are, the older the light you would see. For example, if you were 100 light years away from Earth, you'd be seeing the Earth as it was 100 years ago, since the light from that time would have now just reached you. This idea aligns with the concept of observing events as they unfold in the past, not through any manipulation of time, but rather by observing the light that left the Earth at various points in the past. It's not time travel in the traditional sense, where you physically experience the past, but more like observing it from a distant vantage point. In this sense, you're not altering time, but rather exploiting the way light carries information over distances. While this might not be time travel as popularized in science fiction, it is a form of retrospective viewing that is, in a sense, plausible, given our understanding of light and the speed at which it travels. So it's kind of liking my idea. The tricky part is that this doesn't mean we could interact with the past, i.e., change things. You could only observe events as they were as they were when the light left the Earth. But your concept of seeing the past from a distant vantage point through the light that has reached you is indeed a plausible and fascinating interpretation. Thank you. Follow-up question. My follow-up question. The trick is how to instantly transport oneself to a place light years away. As I understand them, wormholes are thought to be such a shortcut. Do I have it right? If so, how do we get to one of these wormholes, and how do we get back, according to scientists or theoretical physicists? Yes, you're right. You're right on. I'm so sorry. Yes, you're on the right track. Wormholes are indeed thought of as shortcuts through space-time, offering a potential way to travel vast distances almost instantaneously. Here's a breakdown of what we know and what is purely theoretical, by the way, in parentheses, about wormholes. According to scientists and theoretical physicists, what are wormholes? Wormholes are hypothetical structures in space-time that can connect two distant points in the universe. Think of space-time as a fabric and as a wormhole as a tunnel or a shortcut that links two separate locations. If such wormholes exist, they could potentially allow for faster than light travel or travel to distant places much more quickly than taking a traditional route. The concept of a wormhole comes from Einstein's theory of general relativity, which describes how mass and energy warp spacetime. In theory, these tunnels in spacetime could form between two distant points. A wormhole could act as a shortcut, allowing someone to travel from one point in space-time to another almost instantly. How do we get a wormhole? As of now, wormholes are purely theoretical. There's no experimental evidence that they exist, but certain solutions to Einstein's field equations allow for their possibility. Wormholes are predicted to form from the structure of space-time itself. But how to create or find one remains unclear. There are a few ideas, though. Okay. Quantum fluctuations. One potential way that wormholes could form might involve quantum fluctuations. These tiny random fluctuations in the fabric of space-time could, in theory, generate wormholes at a microscopic scale. However, even if such wormholes exist, they would likely be incredibly unstable and too small to be useful. Next bullet point, Einstein-Rosen bridges. The classic concept of wormhole, also called Einstein-Rosen bridge, was proposed by Albert Einstein and his colleague Nathan Rosen. This type of wormhole theoretically connects two black holes, one serving as the entrance and the other as the exit. Theoretical physicists have also explored, quote-unquote, transversal wormholes that could allow safe passage through, but these would likely require exotic forms of energy or matter to remain stable. More on that below. How do we get back? Theoretically, if a stable wormhole could be discovered or created, traveling back and forth would depend on the same principles. The challenge, however, lies in ensuring the wormhole remains open and stable during travel. Some bullet points. 1. Stability. One of the major obstacles to using wormholes for travel is their potential instability. Without some form of exotic matter, hypothetical particles with negative energy or mass, for example, in parentheses, wormholes would collapse almost instantly. Some scientists propose that the exotic matter could help stabilize a wormhole, allowing for safe travel. Bullet point number 2, exotic matter. Exotic matter is a form of matter that would have a negative mass or negative energy density. According to the laws of physics, such matter could counteract the gravitational forces that would otherwise collapse the wormhole. However, exotic matter has yet to be discovered or created in a laboratory, so it remains purely speculative. It's fun to think about, though. Bullet point number 3, time dilation. If a wormhole allows for a faster than light travel, there could be relativistic effects to consider. Depending on the specific nature of the wormhole, time might pass differently for someone traveling through it compared to someone outside. This could create paradoxes or issues with time travel, although it's not clear yet whether this would happen in a wormhole. Okay, challenges and speculations. Bullet point number 1, how to create a wormhole. Even if wormholes are theoretically possible, creating or discovering one is another matter. One idea is that wormholes could exist in the quantum foam at the smallest scales, but we'd need a way to detect and manipulate them. Other theories suggest that the wormholes could be artificially created by manipulating exotic matter or through advanced technology beyond our current understanding. Next bullet point, practicality. Even if we're to find or create a wormhole, the challenge would be maintaining its stability long enough for a human to travel through. Traveling across vast distances like light years would also require an enormous amount of energy, far beyond our current capabilities. Next bullet point, going back and forth. If we could travel through a wormhole, getting back would involve a similar process, assuming we know the exit point and can stabilize the wormhole at both ends. A key issue is whether wormholes, once created, could stay open long enough for multiple journeys, or they might collapse after a single use. What's that? Let me read that again. A key issue is whether wormholes, once created, could stay open long enough for multiple journeys, or if they might collapse after a single use. Okay, there. What do scientists say? Theoretical physicists such as Kip Thorne, who has studied wormholes extensively, suggest that while wormholes are mathematically possible, there's no current way to create, stabilize, or utilize them for travel. They emphasize that we are still far from any practical application of wormholes, and that our understanding of quantum gravity, exotic matter, and space-time geometry is still incomplete. While wormholes are a popular subject in science fiction, they are also a serious subject of study in theoretical physics. However, without breakthroughs in physics, they remain speculative. In conclusion, you're right that wormholes could, in theory, be shortcuts across the universe, potentially allowing us to observe distant events in the past. As you mentioned, however, the technology and understanding needed to manipulate wormholes are far beyond what we have today. Right now, wormholes are an exciting but unproven concept, and getting to one or creating one is something that may only be possible in the far future, assuming we can overcome massive technological and theoretical challenges. Okay, my next question. Now I kind of delve into LDS theology, because there is I'll just read it and you'll understand. In LDS theology, there are scriptures in the Pearl of Great Price, I think, that talk about the past, present, and future being simultaneously before God. LDS theology prizes free will and abhors coercion in any form. So it's not that God controls us, but as a wise parent knows in advance how his children will respond to any set of circumstances. So, based on the immutable laws of the universe, which LDS theology believes God himself cannot go against, how conceivably might God see, quote unquote, the past, present, and future simultaneously? And I've just those who are new to LDS theology might think this is absurd, but even in science, they are talking about, in physics, something about when you run an experiment or a math equation or whatever, forwards, backwards, whatever, there's no distinction. There's no technical distinction between past, present, and future, at least the way I understand it. Okay, so here's what it says in response to that question. In the LDS theology, particularly within the Pearl of Great Price, the idea that God sees the past, present, and future simultaneously is indeed rooted in the belief that God is omniscient, but not in the sense of controlling or coercing free will. Rather, God's foreknowledge is viewed as a result of his perfect understanding of the eternal laws and the inherent agency of his children. LDS view of God's omniscience and the eternal laws. Latter-day Saints believe that God is all-knowing, but his knowledge does not come from controlling or predetermining the choices of his children. Instead, God's knowledge is based on his perfect understanding of the eternal laws of the universe, the nature of agency, and his intimate understanding of how individuals will exercise their agency in any given circumstance. This includes knowing the choices that each of us will make, not because he forces those choices, but because he understands the patterns of cause and effect that shape human behavior. ChatGPT understands this better than I thought. Next paragraph. One key aspect in LDS theology is the doctrine of eternal progression and the law of agency. LDS teachings emphasize that humans are endowed with free will, and God, even in his omniscience, respects and values that agency. I love that. This means that although God knows all things, past, present, and future, he does not use that knowledge to coerce or control. Rather, he allows his children to choose, and he knows, because of his perfect understanding of the laws of the universe, how they will respond to any given set of circumstances. Interesting. Okay, the simultaneity of time for God. The scriptures in the Pearl of Great Price and other LDS writings suggest that the time is a creation of God and exists within his eternal framework. In this view, God exists outside of the time. In this view, God exists outside of time as humans experience. God exists outside of time as humans experience it. He sees all of time in one single eternal now, and he is not bound by temporal limitations. This is illustrated in the passages like in Moses 1:6, where it says, "And the Lord God said unto Moses, Behold, I am the Lord God Almighty, and I am in the midst of thee, and I know thy thoughts and the thoughts of all men, for they are in my hands, and I know them." This suggests that God has a complete and simultaneous understanding of all time, past, present, and future, because he is not constrained by the linear passage of time that governs mortal existence. This belief that the belief is that while we experience time sequentially, one moment after another, God sees everything in an eternal now, because he exists beyond the confines of time. This means that to God, the past, present, and future are all part of his eternal perspective, and he can see them all simultaneously. However, this does not imply predestination or coercion. Instead, as it repeats a lot of the same, instead, God's knowledge is seen as an inherent part of his nature, as a perfect, omniscient being who understands the full consequences of actions, choices, and events, but who does not force anyone to make any particular choice. I love that. Next bullet point, the role of free will and the laws of the universe. In the LDS theology, the key to understanding how God sees all time simultaneously without violating agency lies in the idea that the laws of the universe are eternal and unchanging. These laws govern both physical reality and moral agency. For example, the law of gravity governs the physical world, and the law of agency governs moral choices. Okay. God, as a being who fully understands these laws, knows how every individual will act in any given set of circumstances. He said it before. His knowledge of the future is not a result of him controlling or predetermining actions, but rather a result of his perfect understanding of how individuals will use their agency to choose within those laws. In essence, God's omniscience comes from his eternal and perfect understanding of how the universe operates and how free agents will behave in any set of circumstances. He does not interfere with free will. He simply understands it perfectly. Interesting. I like that. Conclusion. This is the end of it. So in terms of how God might see the past, present, and future simultaneously, it is conceivable in LDS theology because time is not an eternal constant for God. He is not bound by linear time and instead exists outside of it, able to perceive all of it in a single eternal now. His knowledge of the future is not a violation of free will because it comes from his perfect, this repeats the same thing, it comes from his perfect understanding of the eternal laws governing agency and the universe, not from coercing or controlling the choices of his children. Thus, God's omniscience does not contradict the principle of free will, but rather complements it by demonstrating his perfect understanding of the potential outcomes of those choices. I love that. I love that. Anyways, in case you didn't know or never knew, that is basically Mormon theology, LDS theology, and I like that a lot. Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.